paused. I'm going to resume the recording. Okay, let's see here. Oh yes, look at how many options I have. Okay, let me just look.
Hey, Hunter.
Oh, hi, how are you doing, Diane? This is a big night.
Oh, it's a big night. You're
Very
so right.
exciting.
I'm doing great.
What's that cat's name, David?
The one that was just in front is Nora, and this one over here is Nick.
We want to
Right,
make
Nick?
sure we get the right names.
Yeah, Nick and Nora. Well, the one looks like a boy, the other looks like a girl. So, I mean, they really do. It's funny because they don't always look like that. Oh,
How you doing, Nick?
Doing well.
Did you have a nice little time with your family when your kids were off?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, the last time we went, during spring break, it was
Yeah.
fine. It was good. We stayed here. We took our spring break a little early when we went to Cincinnati. So that was kind of our,
That's
that was our
right,
travel
that's right.
time.
Yeah.
So we just hung out this last week.
Well, I've never been to Cincinnati. Yeah, are you busy, Diane, with your fruit business?
Yes, we had our
Would you-
first, we sold plants at the farmer's market, the
Oh,
first
wow.
farmer's market on Saturday. That was great. The weather was kind of nasty and cold, but it was good to be out there, and I'm looking forward to warmer weather.
Oh, it was snowing.
Yeah.
There's Janet.
Hey, Melvin. Good to see you. Thank you for your comments on the bylaws.
You're welcome. Thank you.
let's see now.
Well, you have cats too, Nick. There's one on your back behind you.
Yes, I have 2 orange tabbies. We just got an orange tabby kitten, and we have that one.
And there's also everybody I know so far. Hey, Carol. Hey, Jenna. So we're minus Michaela and Rachel.
Yes.
Anybody else? Kyle?
Well, don't know if Kyle's going to make it or not. He wasn't sure if he could make it or not.
We can't hear you, Carol.
Now you can. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Carol.
For having me tonight. I appreciate it.
We're glad to have you. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. McSheehy. Great to have you here with us this evening.
Hey, thanks, Diane. Everyone can call me Slade.
Okay, Slade. It's a great name. Is it a family name?
Yes, as a matter of fact, my mom was an only child, and her maiden name or surname was Sladek or Sladek, which is a Slovakian name. And so she had 6 kids, and by the 5th one, she said she thought that she needed to pass on the family name in some way, shape, or form, since there were no males to carry on the Slade name. So she named me Slade.
Oh, wow. That's a wonderful story. And it's a
Yeah.
great name and very unusual.
Thanks.
But you haven't run into very many people named Slade.
Only 2. And I'll share that the second one that I ran into, my brother, who's a year and 3 months younger than I, he lives in Florida, and that's where I'm originally from. And he called me about, now it's been about 20 years ago, and he asked me if I'd been visiting in Florida, in the month of April. And I said I hadn't been, because if I'd been in Florida, I would be visiting him. Well, it turns out he was dating a girl, and the girl had a child, and the father's name was Slade.
Oh my gosh. I have to mute myself and catch this phone that's ringing.
Well, anyway, it wasn't me, and but I did end up meeting. He ended up marrying her, and I did end up. So I have a niece whose father is named Slade, and whose uncle name is Slade as well. But there you have it.
Okay.
Hey, Gavin.
Let's see. Well, good evening, people. Hello. Let's see now.
Happy Earth Week, everybody.
Yeah. 5 days, huh? Let's see now. We're Diane,
Yes,
do we have minutes from last general meeting?
we do indeed.
Okay. And those were sent out.
Sunday.
Got it. Okay. There we go. All right.
Hey, Mike, good to see you. I'm glad you're here tonight. Mike Spranger. Looking forward to your presentation, which I
Thank
got
you
to
for-
see in advance.
Thank you for inviting me, or letting me come, rather. I invited myself.
That's fine.
Let's see now.
Hey, Gavin, glad to see you're here.
Hey, Diane, how's it going?
Fine, Kevin. Thank you for your comments on the bylaws. I just started looking at them and am working through them.
I realize how huge a job that is. And I was thinking, do I just add to the difficulty of making comments? But a fair number of them were just consistencies, but hopefully you'll find those were helpful.
Yes, yes, I am finding a lot of them helpful. Some are more difficult than others to address, but that and will require discussion with the board. But yes, I've accepted and made changes on a number of them that I was looking at.
I'll be happy to answer any questions of clarification if you come across that need.
Okay, super. Hey, David, we're very close
Yes.
to having a quorum here.
Okay, so we might as well start the meeting. Well, welcome all to the April 18th meeting of the Vashon-Maury Island Community Council in its old version, I guess we'll call it. And let's see, the first thing I'd like to ask folks, has everyone, well, of those of you who've had an opportunity to review tonight's agenda, are there any?
Point of
Sorry?
order, David?
Oh,
Sorry, point of order?
technical overview. I got it here.
Yes.
Yes,
you.
so I'll hand this over. Is Nick available to tell us about the technical details of using Zoom?
Yeah,
Nick?
I'll keep it very brief. Most folks are pretty
Okay.
familiar. Keep yourself muted unless you're speaking. If you want to speak, please raise your hand with the reactions button and then click the little raise hand button, and then the chair will call on you and then you can unmute yourself and say your piece. Please only join with one device, preferably in the household, but if you have to have multiple people on different devices, keep them in separate rooms for feedback purposes. That's about it. If you're calling in on the phone, which it looks like no one is right now, but you have to press *6 to unmute yourself. And I cannot unmute you, only you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Well, thank you. And did you indicate about the reactions, the raised hand? Got it. All right. Well, I'd like to welcome all of you to this meeting of the Community Council. And at this point, those of you who've had an opportunity to review the agenda, are there any changes or corrections to the agenda that should be made?
An ultimatum by Russian forces to surrender or die. Today,
seeing none, I will adopt the agenda as it's written and as it's been circulated. And those of you who have had an opportunity to review the minutes from the March 21st general meeting, are there any changes or corrections to the minutes from our March meeting? Let's see, do I see any hands raised? No, I don't. So then I will adopt the minutes from the general meeting as they've been circulated. At this point, I'd like to introduce our guests. We have with us Bong Santa Domingo, I apologize. And let's see who else. We've got do we have anyone else from the county? Doesn't appear that we have anyone yet.
Danielle De Clerq will be joining us, I believe.
I believe so
but
too.
we don't see her yet.
Right. And she's coming up next on the agenda. So I think what I will do is I can pass over her on the agenda, go to the next item on the agenda if no one has a problem with that. As long
I'll try to
as
reach her.
Okay. Oh, and I, although he is an Islander, I'd like to also welcome Dr. Slade McSheehy, who's our school district superintendent, and who would be next on our agenda for a presentation. Yes, if you could reach Danielle De Clerq, that would be great. Okay. And Nick, were you able to format a poll for us for the vote that we're coming up to now?
Not during the meeting. We'll just do it with a show of hands, I think.
Okay, that sounds fine. All right. Well, Danielle De Clerq was going to be providing a local services update on behalf of John Taylor, who's not available today. Bong, do you have any idea?
Yes.
Yes. Do you have an idea where Ms. Santam, excuse me, where Ms. De
Danielle?
Clerq, where Ms. De Clerq would be?
I just pinged her, so hopefully she gets it. She knows she's supposed to be here tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you have another somebody else on the agenda, please do so. I mean, we'll
Okay.
jump right in.
All right. Well, then, if there's no objection, I will move to the next item on the agenda, which is the school district superintendent, Dr. Slade McSheehy, will speak on the school's comprehensive plan and student performance. And John Affolter was planning to give an introduction. John, if you would be so kind as to do that for us.
Yeah, I think you can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, good. You've already done some of it, but it's my pleasure to welcome Vashon School District Superintendent, Dr. Slade McSheehy, who would like to talk to us about the comprehensive plan that he, educators, and community members have worked on hard for months, making sure that our children's needs are being met, as well as improvements that can benefit our children's skills acquisitions from kindergarten through high school. After Dr. McSheehy's presentation, the floor will open up for questions. Doctor, the floor is yours.
Thanks, John. It was nice meeting you the other day as well. And thanks everybody on this team to welcome me. And I feel pretty honored to be in front of you tonight. And once again, Gavin, congrats. Everyone, Virgil is the talk of the town. I completely forgot the name, so I apologize, Gavin.
Thanks.
Yeah, what a wild spring break you've probably had. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, everybody. The plan tonight is to talk for 10 minutes and to listen for 10 minutes and answer questions. So hopefully this will go off without a hitch. Disabled participant screen sharing. So there's the first hitch. I'm sure we'll have a moment where I can be a co-host or something where I can share my screen for you. All right, thanks, Nick. All right, and let's make sure that I'm doing the right thing here. I'm on my MacBook at home, so I'll make sure I get my right screen up. That's what we're doing. Okay. Here we go. All right, let's try this one more time.
Hey, Nick.
All right, can everybody see what you should see a strategic plan overview? Get a thumbs up. Thanks, Nick. All right, so as John said, we have been working on this plan almost, well, actually for over a year, if you count the time working with, approving the board, making a recommendation to the board to approve a consultant. So we worked with Performance Fact, which you can see there, facilitated by Performance Fact. And I'm going to give you a 10-minute version of the strategic plan overview and then leave you 10 minutes to ask questions. I'm going to share a link after this to the Vashon Island School District website where we host all this information. So you'll have that in the chat room right after this. But let's go ahead and move through. And so, people might ask sometimes, why did you go through the planning process? Well, as with anything, our bodies, our cars, it comes at a point in time where we have to bring everything back into alignment. And we have a lot of great things happening in our school district, but maybe they weren't always in line with each other. And kids, by and large, could experience a pre-K 5 experience, then go to the middle school, experience a 6 to 8 experience, and then go to the high school and experience a 9-12 experience. We really want a pre-K 12 experience for our kids here. And so when we know all of our systems are aligned and we're planning to a unique purpose, then we're going to be much better at achieving the results that we need to achieve for our kids. I really appreciated Performance Facts premise as Mutiyu, who was our lead consultant, he said they're propaganda. He talked about our kids not learning well yet because they haven't been taught well yet. And we talked about the importance of the instructor in the classroom. And then we also talked about the importance of the support around those instructors and all those support folks in the classroom. And so, but it's really this premise that we're not there yet. And I really like that and appreciate that idea that we're going, at great speed towards many, spectacular outcomes for kids, but not every kid is experiencing those outcomes that we know that are possible for them. And it's just not experienced yet. And so, we embarked on a pretty significant process that brought together, 4 different planning teams. You're going to see a few pictures here that kind of demonstrate the 80 or so folks that were involved in the core planning team. But I believe as John and a few other folks know that we had alignment teams where community members participated. We had parent teams where our Latino parents, our Syrian parents engaged in the process, gave us feedback of what was working, what was not working. What do we need to stop doing, start doing? What do we need to change? What do we need to continue? But just give you an idea of our kids, profile of our students. Out of every 20 students, 15 are white, 3 Latinx, and 2 or more races. Out of our students, 2 are students with disabilities. 5 come to us in low-income families. 1 out of every 20 comes to us as an English language learner. And this gives you an idea, kind of the teams that we had in check. We had a core planning team, which you see at the center there, which involved students, it involved community members, it involved teachers, it involved board members, a whole range of folks. Between 70 and 80 people showed up for 5 different full day planning days. And then we had an alignment team that showed up for a couple of days, and an instructional focus team that also showed up for 3 days, which was comprised mostly of teachers. But you can see we had, just a heavy amount of engagement here, and I appreciate anybody that's on screen with us today. I apologize first if I don't remember that you were a part of a team, or what part you are, you made those contributions, but it really was an island effort, which I felt at the beginning, if we were going to have any success with this pretty ambitious plan, it was going to have to be a whole island effort and not just a school community effort. This is a list of all the members, and so you can kind of get an idea of all the people involved. I'm going to move through this. This is really at the heart of our planning, and so we call it equity-centered strategic planning. And our plan is divided up into 3 circles each, and at the center of that is student learning, where our students live. And at the second circle, you'll see where we have teachers building in instructional effectiveness, where we really look at instructional effectiveness. And then this last circle, circle 3, empowering infrastructure, which is where, kind of probably people might think the superintendent comes into play, but we have directors, principals, director of teaching and learning, all the things that we need to make happen, budget and finance, all things we need to make happen so that teachers have the best tools in front of them, the best supports available to them. When I say teachers, I really want to include paraprofessionals, like every staff member who's on the front lines with our kids in a daily way in terms of instruction. And so when we look at those 3 circles, we start to kind of build in, okay, circle student 1, what's our student learning focus here? We have a bank of shared beliefs. And if you can imagine a group of 80 folks coming to consensus on shared beliefs, you'll read that, we want learning to be joyful. We know that in order to get to any true academic outcomes, students need to feel like they belong. We know that we need, equal outcomes for every student. And that means every student without exception. And it's our collective responsibility. And that's where we think about the Vashon-Maury, Island community, is what's going to be our role in supporting all of our kids. We may not know what that role is right now. We may not be able to define that for you right now, but we know that that role exists, and we know that we can't do it alone. We also heard from our students that they want a voice. They want some say in what's happening in their lives and in their schooling. And I'll let you know, I have a junior right now and a freshman at the high school, and they've had great experiences in our schools, but there are some things that they know that they would like to see done differently. And we need to make sure that we're hearing those kids and all of our kids, not just the superintendent's kids by any means, but we have a student advisory board, we have student advocacy groups, and they have tremendous power, tremendous voice and ideas, unique and singular ideas about what would make their experience the best experience for them and for all of our kids. And then, last belief is about shared sustained connections with families and community. And that's, again, kind of why I think I've been invited tonight to build in that those connections. When all was said and done, we talked about our mission and our vision and what was that going to look like. And we want every student to be welcomed, known, and treasured, and graduates with confidence and competence to thrive in a future they imagine. And this is something that we, as we build this promise out, how are we going to build the same kind of commitment that these group of 80 folks around the core planning team, the alignment team, the instructional focus team, how are we going to build that same commitment out to our community, to the, not just to our four walls in terms of our schools, but to the broader community at large. But I want us to just kind of sit and think about that. Every student is welcomed, known, and treasured, and graduates confident to thrive in a future they imagine. And so, that the possibilities here are endless, and this is completely aspirational. But we know we need to be living in the clouds on this one. When we set a strategic plan in motion, it's not about kind of a simplistic view of where we think we might want to go. We want to, as folks kind of sometimes say, reach for the stars. One of the things, I'm going to see if I can everybody see that I just blew that up? Great. So when we think of a portrait of a graduate of Vashon, and I'm going to leave us on this, when we think about what kind of student do we want to see leave our schools, what kind of student do we want to see future employers pick up as graduates, and what kind of student do we want to see moving off to, whether it's different careers or college, what kind of student do we want to send off? When I'm busy handing those diplomas on the stage, what is the vision for the student that we want to see? And this vision, this portrait of a graduate, we want to kind of deconstruct it. And what does this look like if you're an elementary student at Chautauqua? What does this look like if you're a middle school student at McMurray? And then how do we kind of bring this vision to reality by the time they're in high school, so that we have students that are taking action, we have students that are people of the world, we have students that feel connected and that are thinking critically and creatively, and students that are developing agency, meaning that kind of self-actualization that we want to see happen that junior and senior year, and sometimes sooner with some kids, as Gavin knows, that kind of self-actualization that says, hey, this is what I think I want to do. And I know, given every one of my experiences here on Vashon, that I'm prepared and ready to realize moving forward. And even if it's not even if I'm not exactly 100% sure, I know that even if things go wrong in a couple of years, that I'm going to kind of have the kind of resiliency and the connections and the agency and that desire to take action, that I'm going to be okay, even if my first choice or second choice doesn't work out. And so we kind of culminated the planning process in this portrait of a Vashon graduate. And this is what spoke most to folks during that experience. And so it kind of gives you, a 10-minute, just kind of, high-level overview picture of where we want to be with our Vashon promise, every student feeling welcome, known, and treasured, and our portrait of a graduate, where we feel is kind of our target, for students to aim for teachers to aim for, and for our district to aim for as a whole. And then, Vashon Island, to really be proud of the schools that we support every few years with our levies and of course in our bond experiences. So that brings me at 15 minutes, at 12 minutes, folks. I went a couple minutes over, it looks like, but I'd love to take the 8 or 10 minutes or so left over to open up the floor as David said would happen. And I just appreciate my time with you tonight.
Great. All right. Let's see. Do we have any questions for our superintendent? If you could raise your hands in the reactions part, I can see it best. Well,
yes, James.
Okay, James. If you could unmute yourself. Oh, that would be Jim Garrison, I believe.
Yep. Hi, David. Hi.
Hi, Jim.
Dr. Sheehy.
Hi, Jim.
I did have a question for you. I went to high school in a high school that had quite a bit of vocational education. And I'm wondering if your plan dealt with that aspect of the high school education and even middle school.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jim, and appreciate you asking it. And there's a very strong focus on what we call CTE, and that's Career Tech Ed. It's the old VOTEC. I grew up in the VOTEC world, but we are Career Tech Ed focused now. And there is a renewed focus on Career Tech Ed. Vashon High School has always had a pretty strong presence in the career technical education with kids having access to experiences in our wood shop, in our jewelry making, in our fine arts programming. So there's we would like to expand it, but we really want to expand it and call it career connected learning, and really take that what we would consider a true voc ed experience and connect it with our island partners, such as Matsuda Farms, Mukai Farms, the Vashon Center for the Arts. We know that we have a lot of kids who get to their senior year really close to or already having fulfilled their graduation requirements. And we'd like to see them leverage that time that they have with us into internships, which would fall under our Career Tech Ed programming. We have communications and conversations started with Sawbones, Thriftway, like I said, Matsuda and Mukai Farms, the Center for the Arts. Vashon Nature Center is also an opportunity that we're exploring, where students can spend half of their senior year in an internship, get those credits, but get those real life experiences, those hands-on experiences. And some may even offer a true kind of post-secondary certificate. So those are all options on the table, and options that this plan points to.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to emphasize, I've been in the building trades all my life, and we just don't have any kids coming up who are being directed towards plumbing, electrical, construction. And I also run a water company, and everybody that's running water companies is 70 years old. And these are really good jobs. A water system operator, even an operator one, is 30, 35 bucks an hour.
Right.
So these are good jobs, they're local jobs, and we're running into a situation where we're having to import all our labor from off island. And, you know, that's okay, it works, but it's really a shame.
I agree. I agree. And there's been a loud cry for, you know, expanding on those opportunities, but really, you know, not go a, you know, mile wide and an inch deep. Let's keep it focused to, you know, let's have some focus, you know, between 3 and 7 systems here on the island, partnerships, and get kids plugged into those.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Okay, I see Carrie Ulatowski's got her hand up. Carrie? I think you'll have to unmute.
I just wanted to also add my concerns to what the last gentleman spoke of. I know several young people on the island. They're past graduates. They're not interested in going to college, but they have been looking for apprenticeships, and not internships, but apprenticeship programs with like electricians and plumbers, and there is nothing. And those are services that, quite frankly, so many of us need, and there is a dearth. So I've always been a big advocate of a college education, but I know some young people are just not interested in that. They want to use their hands. They're fascinated by it. And I think we are shortchanging a lot of kids by just emphasizing, as you mentioned, the nature center, VCA, you know, all of those are nice, but there's a real labor shortage in these other areas. And I really do believe that should be more of a consideration, because I see a lot of young people who want to work with their hands, but there are no opportunities on island. And in fact, a lot of them want to stay on the island and be part of our community. So I'm all for graduating and moving on to other types of formal education, but I think we have to consider other things other than just the arts and things like that. But thank you very much, and I'm glad this was brought up.
Thanks, Carrie. And those discussions have been held as well. Absolutely, there aren't a lot of opportunities for those kinds of apprenticeships, even on island. We have a skill center. We have a couple skill centers that we're connected with off island. It's been very difficult to get our kids to be able to go off island to take advantage of those skill centers where those kinds of apprenticeships that you're talking about exist.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah. Not something we're closing the door on.
Okay, good thing.
Thank you, Carrie.
And to jump on the bandwagon myself, you know, I was brought up in the East Coast where college, four-year college was the only choice really, but I've evolved to the point where I realized that the trades are so essential and so valuable, you know, to kids. And I'm wondering if the school is working to foster relationships with technical schools and vocational training centers off island so that we can, you know, funnel some of our kids in there.
Yeah, yes, we do currently. And once again, it's the commute that kind of makes it a little more difficult for students who traditionally an internship or an apprenticeship will start with a student taking a number of courses during the day at the school and then go off-site. And from a technical point of view, at least it's been shared with me, and I've been in other systems when you have a skill center that might be a 20-minute drive. For our students, it's, you know, it's a drive, then it's a ferry commute. If the ferry's working, it's a little different kind of commitment. And so, yes, we do. we foster those relationships, and there are students who take advantage of those. They're not at the number that we would like to see. So what we want to do is really focus on what is on island and what are those opportunities on island. And that's why I've kind of named some of the partnerships that we've identified in the near term. Again, not shutting the door, closing the door on any kind of opportunities for kids who have the means and have the opportunity to move off island into some type of an internship or apprenticeship. When I talk about career connected learning, it's really about 3 phases. It's learning about work, then learning for work, and then learning to work. And learning about work should start actually when they're in the elementary school. You're right, there's a culture on Vashon where every student's supposed to go to college. And that's something that has to shift, because that doesn't fit every student. So there isn't a one size fits all. And so we want to provide more experiences where kids are learning about work at the elementary level, and then even into that kind of early middle school. Then they start to learn for work, doing some shadowing, some different experiences on island, and having folks come in and kind of take them under their wing. And then learning to work becomes into that internship, and as Carrie mentioned, that kind of apprentice stage in high school. And so it really is a 3-phase process. It isn't about all of a sudden getting to high school and trying to figure out what you want to do. We want that figuring out what you want to do to happen early. We want to see kids explore possibilities early, so they're not arriving at high school now faced with this kind of sudden surge of what are you going to do with the rest of your life, and if everyone else is going to college, and that's what I'm supposed to do too. I'll just tell you, my own kids kind of fall into that situation where I really want my oldest right now to be exploring all kinds of opportunities, because there's not just college out there. It's a very difficult culture to kind of butt up against when you're here on Vashon. But he never had that experience of being asked the questions and being exposed to different opportunities at an early age. And so that's the kind of 5 to 7 year system that I see that we can do here on Vashon and really do it well. So by the time kids get to high school, they have more than one idea about what they want to do with the rest of their lives, rather than just look around them and what's my friend doing. They've already had some sparks kind of lit for them because of their experience with whatever speaker or whatever job shadow or whatever opportunity they had to some mentoring, whatever opportunity they had that really kind of gives them that extra just a step forward.
Okay, I see that John had a question. Can you give an overview of how the special education program transitions from middle school to high school?
If you have about an hour, I could share with you an over. So I'll just share with you, John, I appreciate the question. I don't know if, is there something more specific you're looking for? Because, beyond kind of how our teachers communicate with, in a small system, we're able to really provide a personal handoff, when we transition kids from elementary to middle and middle to high school. But each, student has their own unique situation, and it's not, there's probably not a general overview that I can share with you that would capture all the nuances that are involved with students and their own individual educational programs, and how those teachers work together to make sure that there's, as much as possible a seamless transition, because students who receive special services are on a very broad range of services that they receive. So that might be the best overview I can give you without giving you like a full on, that's a whole nother presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions from any of the participants here? Don't see any hands raised. So it looks as if, we appreciate your information, your presentation, and look forward to your leadership of the school district in the years ahead.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna go ahead and put in the chat box a link to the strategic planning page.
Okay.
And so if you go there, you'll see there's kind of two main artifacts. You'll see that on the front page, you'll see what we call our 4-pager that condenses all of our strategic plan information into 4 pages. And then on the next one, in that document, you'll see some documents. And if you want to explore further, please feel free. And I'm also going to type my email in here, because I encourage anybody, if they'd like to reach out to me personally. That's kind of one of the great things about working here on Vashon Island is that I'm just able to really connect with people on a much more personal level than maybe other larger districts like a Seattle or a Tacoma. And so if you truly have a question or an idea or anything that you think would help move our district forward and move our kids forward, I know that's what we want for all of our kids, and you can email me directly there. And also, one more thing here. That's my phone number. That's my cell phone. So if you ever want to call me and have a conversation, you can do that as well.
Well, great. Thank you again. And should I call you Slade too? Yeah,
Slade is exact. The only I asked the kids call me Dr. McSheehy, because I believe that's this idea of an education and being a continuous learner is important, and I want kids to kind of understand that there's different places where you go, but with everybody in the community, moms, dads, community members, staff members, it is just Slade. So that's who I am.
Well, thank you very much. And I invite your participation in this organization. And if you have any students who you feel might be interested in getting more involved in community government, this is a good opportunity for them.
Great, David. I have my next student advisory board. I have a group of 15 students who meet with me monthly. I will put this on our agenda for them. Great. Okay, well, thank you for coming. Yes, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great evening. Okay. Next on the agenda, or actually first on the agenda, I'm wondering, Bong, have you been able to locate?
No, I got a text. Danielle sends her regrets. Okay, but you get me. So, what do you have in mind, David?
Oh, okay. Well, we were wondering about an update on what local services is doing for Vashon, and in particular, how is our garbage can project going for the town of Vashon?
Yeah, well, that's still in the works, right? That the last conversation we had about that is, I believe we may end up buying those garbage cans because we couldn't get any surplus anywhere around the county.
Okay.
So that's one possibility. Okay, but I was not privy to that conversation. That would be John Taylor, but I'll find out once he gets back next week and send you an email right away. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's in the works. We haven't forgotten that. The other thing that's exciting is we're going to be coming back to the office in Vashon. So DLS will again be back in the island.
Okay.
And we are housed at the Chamber of Commerce. I'm there once a week, but we have other staff that's going to be going down there. So we don't know the full schedule yet, but we will be announcing that soon.
Okay, and we had that town meeting on the county town meeting, and what is developed from that meeting, if anything?
Well, we let's see, because we are now in the process of submitting all this to the council, and we're preparing documents for council's review and all that. And as far as Vashon is concerned, we had a good participation. About 228 folks responded on the publicinput.com.
Right.
and help prioritize what they feel like what the island needs. So we have that on record.
Okay.
And yeah, so I mean, different areas have different responses. The most we've had was about 500 or more requests, community needs list requests coming from Snoqualmie. So Vashon is up there. But you know, a lot of them also, you know, if you get the because I was tasked with looking at the raw data, a lot of them are like repeats. So it couldn't be lumpy. So we did our own preliminary organizing of, you know, where things go. And then when we opened the public input.com page, that's when residents from Vashon came in and started prioritizing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know that someone had asked about how we can get potholes on Maury Island fixed, and I don't know if that's been addressed.
Let's see. As far as transportation is concerned, that was pave more roads pretty much is an item that was said, but it did get a pretty high response.
Okay.
Oh yeah, the rest, the biggest response is probably increased bicycle friendliness on the island. You know, like bike lane signage, bicycle friendly shoulders, and then you know, increased frequency of water services, water taxi services. That was a biggie. And of course, increase walkability on Vashon. That garnered a lot of response.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see Nick Simmons has a question for you.
Hi, Bong. Is there a place
Hey.
that we can see the results of the surveys, like
Yes.
by area?
Yeah, it will be posted. We're still cleaning it up. So it's gonna be posted, I believe, on our website on the local services page.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And Jim Garrison?
Hi, Bong. This is Jim
Hey, Jim.
Garrison.
Hey, Jim.
Can you tell us anything about the solar project at the dump?
I don't have information about that. You said solar project? Are you
Yeah, I
talking
noticed-
about the what is it? The free rebate if you get a solar in your house? Or is that something else?
It's something else. They're putting up panels at the dump,
At the where?
at the landfill.
Oh, okay, solar panels. No, I don't have that information. I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Are there, okay, I see Evie Horton has her hand up. Evie?
Hi, Evie.
Hi, this is Evie Horton.
Oh, I'm
Evie.
sorry, Evie.
I'm wondering about the, hi, Bong, thank you. The street striping that happened recently, the painted lines, the yellows and whites.
Mhm.
Did that happen across both islands? And is that on sort of a, do you know, is that on a rotation, like every 3 years or something? Does that happen?
That I don't know. If it's on our roads and we just did that, then yeah, that's an annual thing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're talking about the Vashon Highway, right?
I'm talking actually about more than just that Vashon Highway. It seems to be on most streets and roads, actually.
Yeah, many of the roads.
Yeah. I'll find out from roads if that's you just want to know if that's an annual regular thing.
Yeah, what sort of schedule? Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm just thinking about, maybe it was a concession to, not having potholes filled and that sort of thing. The budget pressures of that. I'm just curious.
Okay. I'll find out.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
All right. And Bong, if you could make a point of having a report to us next time that you come, which is, I believe, in 2 months.
Sure.
with regard to the purchase of these trash bins, because I think it's been a couple of months since the county should have come to the realization that these bins had to be purchased. And as far as I see it, it's just a matter of getting the funds together to do it. And this, the strawberry festival's coming up. I remember last year, being involved in the strawberry festival, you look around and there isn't a single garbage can on the street. So you wonder where these 12,000 people who come to the island are throwing their garbage, So I've said it before that if the county is going to act to rural areas, unincorporated areas, as if they're treating us like municipalities, then we should certainly have garbage service in our community, particularly in the business area. And so this is one where the county appears to have been just kicking the can down the road. And so if we can get a report in 2 months that these cans have been purchased, and that would be acceptable. But anything short of that at this time, it doesn't seem like you guys are doing enough work on it, if I may be frank. Oh, I think you're muted, Bong.
Well,
Okay,
I
there.
don't think that's true, David, but
Okay.
you're entitled to your opinion. But,
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, but I will get you something. Okay, hopefully before 2 months. John Taylor comes back in a couple of weeks, I think.
Okay, all
So
right.
I'll pin him down on where are we and how we're gonna get this to the island.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right.
Are there other questions for Bong or for King County
Local services.
local services? Okay, not seeing any. I guess it's time to move on to the next item on our agenda. Thank you, Bong.
I'm gonna post my my contact information so anybody can get a hold of me.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna type it here.
Oh, and wait, here's a question. The potholes fixed on Maury or elsewhere else on Vashon, King County Road Services provides customer service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for reporting any potential problems or concerns affecting the roadways throughout unincorporated King County. To report a pothole or roadway defect, call the 24/7 road helpline at 477-8100. And that was Steve Bergman. Okay.
Yeah, I'll get that information to you guys.
Okay.
The good news, local services, roads and permitting is part of our department. So it's a lot simpler to get a hold of somebody.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Oh,
No
excuse
problem.
me. Sorry. Deborah Gusson had a question.
Go ahead.
And we may not have time for this, but I just wondered if you also have some influence over just general road safety, the number of incidents we've seen in the last few weeks around pedestrian safety. We've had terrible incidents, 4 rollover accidents on my stretch of the road in the last year. And just wondered if that's part of the scope of this or if that's a whole other area.
That is part of what we receive from the publicinput.com or the initial raw data that came in as far as the community needs list. But when it came down to the prioritization, it did not get, because we're calling it implement traffic calming measures like speed bumps, additional signage, stoplight, intersection optimization, speed limit reductions, a lot of stuff, right? It did not garner a high score as far as the prioritization by 228 residents of Vashon. So if you can email me and tell me the exact location of that problem area you're talking about. Not, maybe we can help. Okay.
I'll do that. I also wonder if people's prioritization might have changed in the last couple of weeks. If people didn't think that was a problem before, there's been some terrible things that have happened recently, and I think it might have changed people's perspective on the relative safety of our roads.
Yeah, definitely. But anyway, you have my email. Send it to me.
Great, thank you.
And then and be specific as much as possible. If you know an intersection, just let us know.
Okay, thank you again, Bong.
Thank you, David.
Okay, and the next item on the agenda would be old business and a vote to accept Rachel Rome as a board member. So at this point, I would just like to call the question unless there is some debate on the issue. Robert Piston? Oh,
I'm sorry. I was trying to vote yes. Sorry.
Oh, okay, good. Well, then I'll call the question, and all those in favor of having Rachel Rome on our board, please show that through your reaction by showing a raised hand.
Danielle's here.
Oh, Danielle's made it. Okay.
I think she passed.
No, I'm here. I am here. I'm sorry. And I'm so sorry. I had to pick up my 87-year-old mother who has Parkinson's from the airport, and her flight was incredibly delayed. So my biggest apologies, but there's nobody that comes before my mother. So as I'm sure you're all familiar with that problem or that delay, whichever way, whatever your perspective is. So yes, I am sorry that to be so late, and I know that Bong probably did a good job of answering all questions and giving you a good update. I see a lot of hands up, and I don't think they're all for me.
No, those were the votes that affirmed our having Rachel Rome as a board member. Do we have an official count on that?
We have 24.
And okay.
There's a total participants 31.
But some of the participants are from off island.
Yeah, 29 voting members are present.
Okay, 29 voting members are present, and we had 24 votes in favor. Then I would say that Ms. Rome is accepted as a new member of the board. But turning back to Danielle, was there anything that you had to share with us that I don't know if you heard most of Bong's presentation, but I know I was a little bit critical of the lack of movement on the garbage can, the acquisition. And do you have anything to add to that?
I do. So
Good.
so the Parks Department does not have any garbage cans or litter bins that we can use. They don't have any extra. Roads doesn't have any that we can use. Local services, the director's office, we're trying to see if our budget will let us buy them. So we're looking at the litter cans that might work. I think we have a couple of options that we would like to share with you to sort of see what will work best, because obviously they have a different look. You know, some litter cans look differently than others. And we're scrounging around in our budget to see if we can find the funds to pay for them. Wanted to talk to you about how many we think we needed. And then it would still be the crews that would pick them up. So it would be the Conservation Corps crews that would come by to pick them up and empty those litter cans out. And I don't have a schedule on that yet. We're still waiting to hear from the executive's office when new crews can start. They're working on a contract with the Millionaires Club, or what used to be the Millionaires Club. They're now called Uplift Northwest, to see if we can get more crews using the federal funding for the next year or so. So that's my update. So there is movement, but it's not very fast, and I'm terribly sorry about that, but there is movement on it, and we are trying to make it happen. So I want to let you know that.
Okay, well, thank you for, but it appears now that we'll need to get funding. I believe that the number was 9 that we'd been talking about.
Okay.
And I expect that they're over $1,000 for a can, but
they're quite expensive.
Sure.
They are quite expensive. I wouldn't worry about funding quite yet, because I think we can find it.
Okay.
It's getting towards the end of our biennium, and when you have staff vacancies and some other things, and sometimes there's some money, like you pick up sofa cushions and there are always coins there. So we'll pick up the sofa cushions, and we are picking up the sofa cushions to see what we can find. And I think we'll be able to do something. And depending on which ones they are, they will need installation. So they might need drilling into concrete, something like that. We're trying not to do that because that makes it all much more complicated and expensive. But we also don't want them blowing around in the wind. So we know we need some sort of metal outer structure, but we're hoping that we can get something that won't cost quite $1,000 and that won't require hardcore, serious installation, but that will still be sturdy and stay in place.
Okay.
So do you want us to reach back out to you when we have a couple of selections?
Yes, I would like to hear that.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
I would like to be involved in just taking a look at the options.
Sure. And who is that just spoke up?
Yeah, that's Steve Bergman.
Yes, Steve.
I wonder if it's possible to include a recycling bin with the litter bin, to have a station of 2 bins together, because a majority of our waste on Vashon is recyclable, and it would be a shame to send a lot of it to the landfill when it doesn't need to go there.
I was going to bring that up too, Steve. Good point.
And so what we're talking about is a minimum of a dual. Hopefully in the future, we're going to have 3 bins, one for organic waste, but we're not there yet on the island.
So having worked for a solid waste company, and we can talk about it and we can decide, but having worked for a solid waste company, I know that litter bins, even though there's a recycling version and a garbage version, if there is a place that has both, the recycling is often contaminated. And if anything in the bag is not recycling, the recycling facility will throw that out as garbage. So it is only worthwhile to do a recycling can if you are sure, and no, but you can't guarantee that, right? That anybody walking down the street is really going to put clean, recyclable materials in the recycling can. And we used to find coffee in there, full cups of paper, paper cups, but they're full of coffee. They've got gum in them. They've got, peanut butter wrapped sandwich paper, but it's got peanut butter on it, and then they can't recycle any of it.
Yep. So believe it or not, King County, the CSA funded 2 recycling stations that we have at Ober Park and at the Village Green that are both landfill and recycling, and people on Vashon do a great job of separating the 2. So we are capable on this island of not contaminating our recycling.
Okay.
So
good.
Yeah, we're very well trained here.
Okay, excellent. Well, then we will try to do the dual, and I'll see what I can do. Okay,
Great.
I'll let
Thank you very
know.
much.
David, I'll reach out to you as soon as we get a better answer.
Okay, great.
All right.
And I see that Carrie Ulatowski was wondering, what involvement does the Chamber of Commerce have with this, with their businesses? I've been in contact with the Chamber of Commerce on this for quite some time now. And since we have been in touch with the county, they are deferring to our interaction with the county on this. They've basically said, we've expressed our strong interest in this, which they have. And so we're trying to do this with you so that you don't have to work with 2 different organizations.
And the Chamber of Commerce does not have the bandwidth to handle this recycling. I've talked to Cheryl Lupert for the last 3 years about it, and they can't do it. So
Right.
they're not in this business.
Correct, which is why they're deferring to our interaction with the county on this. Okay, well, thank you very much. So now we have a new board member, and we have the latest updates from the county. I'd like to move on to committee updates. If we could start with Morgan Brown, who's the chair of the Affordable Housing Committee. Morgan, do you have an update with regard to that committee?
Sure, I can give an update. We had our last meeting was on March 28th. And we have a few different work groups. We wanted to go over some different topics on it, but one of the ones that's generated a bunch of interest has been the issue of water availability on the island and whether it can support, what size population and whether that's a challenge for housing. And since I'm on the Groundwater Protection Committee and we have a group looking at that there too, I've decided to invite a bunch of them, and John Martinek, the new director of Water District 19 for the town, showed up. And so we actually spent most of the meeting in a very lively discussion over that topic. I don't think it was, like we necessarily settled anything, but there's a lot of discussion about what the science is and whether it's really supports the fact that we don't have enough water on the island for housing, and whether some of the conventional wisdom about there being a lack of water is more an infrastructure issue. So that was a lively discussion, nothing necessarily determined. The Groundwater Protection Committee is looking at it too, as will the Affordable Housing Committee, but a great discussion on that at our last meeting. Let's see, what else did I have here? Working with Vashon Household and to a certain extent with the Land Trust on some ideas for some new efforts to get more information and new programs to address housing. As the representative for the council, I meet with them regularly, and a couple of things are going on that. I mentioned before that Vashon Household is planning on introducing a home share program where they essentially do the matchmaking of putting together people that are looking for housing and people that have housing in their own house, and they're willing to create a room in there and have some desire to live with someone else and maybe get some help. And they were interested in sharing that with the council, then backed off and decided they wanted to update the program, have hired a new consultant, and are doing a review of that and putting a bunch more effort. And I think got a little bit of grant funding to help with that. So that's something we should anticipate coming out of Vashon Household in the next, few months. I don't know that I got an exact timeline. Another thing that the Vashon Household and the Affordable Housing Committee are looking at collaborating on is a survey. There's been some discussion about some initial grant money being available to do something, and whether that was significant enough to do what we wanted to do, but that's just in discussion right now. But a survey is one way or another intended to try to get a little bit more of a sense of what the need is for both rental and for sale housing on the island. Let's see, there's also been an ongoing discussion between the Land Trust and Vashon Household and the committee on the idea of community land trusts and whether the Land Trust could get involved in that. And that's gone a little bit into some also discussions about interest in an eco district for the town. But those are bigger topics, but just drop them out there as discussions that we've been having. And I guess the last thing I'd say on that, I went to a conference last week that I found extremely interesting. It was in Portland. It's called YIMBY Town, and it was really for housing advocacy and addressing the housing problem in communities all over. It's probably the more significant one nationally for that. And it was terribly exciting. I mean, on the bad side, there's a lot of places having housing problems. Vashon is not unique in this, but on the positive side, it feels like, at least that's what a lot of the talks and discussions were about, is there is improvements happening around the country. Some of this applies to Vashon, some of it applies to Vashon in different ways, but it's terribly exciting to hear that there's a great understanding of the need and the need to do housing reform and to address zoning reform and address the fact that we've done zoning in the past that has been exclusionary and some of it very racist based, and that needs to sort of change, and also parking reform. So it was interesting, a lot of interesting stuff. There were a lot of politicians there. I spoke with Joe Fitzgibbon, our state representative, who's also chair of the environmental committee in the state legislature. And he acknowledged right off the bat that, yes, he knows that Vashon is in a housing crisis, and was interested in sort of talking further about what, possibly could be done about it. So I'm hoping to follow up with that. Yeah, I think I'd probably like to sort of summarize a bunch of the things that happened there at a later date and go over that in something that can be disseminated, because I think there's a lot that can be learned about efforts that are happening in other places around the country. And it's actually a pretty exciting time. There's been some big legislative action that's happened in California and Oregon that's everybody is watching. And Washington, as Joe Fitzgibbon noted, he submitted some legislation to make some changes and adjustments in 2019, and they failed, and they've tried 2 or 3 times again at a statewide level. Again, not this doesn't apply directly to Vashon, but it's relevant to what we're doing. But part of the issue they generally say is most cities, almost all of the land, or the vast majority of the land, is locked up in single family housing, and trying to make changes so that they can do ADUs, so you can do duplexes, so you can do triplexes, so that you can do small apartment buildings, the missing middle housing, as it's called. And interesting because of the acknowledgement in the sub-area plan for Vashon that what we really need is that missing middle housing in Vashon town. So there's relevancy to a lot of it. It's kind of an exciting time in it, even though it's scary because of the housing need. The next meeting we're having was supposed to be on May 9th. I may survey sort of the regular appearing members on it if they want to do that without me, but I found out I have to go to out of country on a business trip. So I'm suggesting right now that we do the next meeting on May 23rd, unless someone else wants to step forward and do it on May 9th without me. So, okay, that's a quick update for me if anybody has any questions. Oh, and again, I do want to say we had a good turnout for the last one. Interested, we could certainly handle more people that are interested in it. There's sort of a lot of work we're trying to do in terms of gathering information. So if anybody has particular interest in that, can either email me, I'll put it in the chat, or the info at, I think put that last time, the info at VMICC, I think somebody put that in the meeting notes somehow. I imagine it'd get to me, and I'll add you to the list on when we're doing our Affordable Housing Committee meetings. So
great. Thank you, Morgan, and thank you for the work you're doing. The next committee for a report.
Point of order, David, there's a hand up, James.
Oh, Jim Garrison.
Hi, Jim. Jim, you're still muted.
Sorry. Hi, Morgan.
Hi, Jim.
I was just curious if anybody's looking at the care center as a housing solution.
Yes, but every time I ask, it's not public knowledge or even being shared with me right now, just that there have been discussions and apparently they're still ongoing.
Okay, yeah, it seems like the community spent a lot of time and money on that facility. And I realize we don't own it, unfortunately, but it seems like it should be directed back to community use. It's a fine facility, and with some modifications could serve quite a few housing units.
I totally agree, and there's quite a few people who I'm involved in this sort of thing who agree with that, and I believe Vashon Household is in very active discussions with them. I understood at some point there was some reluctance from the owner, and I assume that discussions are still ongoing, that there has been some positive developments, but I can't report more than that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to move on to the Equity Committee with Kevin Jones. Kevin, do you have a report for us?
Yes, I do, David. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Just a public service announcement before we jump into the Equity Committee report. The updated, the proposal to update building codes in unincorporated King County, which was a motion passed by this council, was mentioned as the hearing occurred, and the committee that heard that proposal passed that, which means it'll go on to now the full King County Council. We're just waiting to hear when. So I just wanted to make sure that folks on the committee heard that. Let's see, on the Equity Committee, I just want to acknowledge there's several folks here tonight from the Equity Committee, Hunter, Kyle, Jenna, Kathleen, Deborah Anderson, and Deborah Gusson. Although Deborah Gusson, we haven't found a time when we can find to meet together, but thank you for being here and for your participation in the Equity Committee. I will mention our third meeting is going to be May 4th. The progress we have made since the motion passed is, first of all, meeting, getting to know each other, understanding our skills and our talents and how we would like to contribute to the Equity Committee. And probably most importantly, talking about our equity interest areas. And so which folks are, say, focused on racial equity, economic equity, housing equity, things of that nature. We have a number of subgroups, and for example, a group reviewed the King County equity documents, as we are part of King County, wanted to see what policies applied to us through that, through the county. Also looking at the VMICC documents to make sure we understand the equity content in the existing documents and also in the reboot documents, so our members are aware of that equity content. And we're also, a group is reviewing the equity policy toolkit that we discovered to determine which of those tools we would want to use as the Equity Committee moves forward. Really the focus here is to foster an understanding of the current equity provisions and approaches that apply to us today. And we certainly want to have that understanding before we contemplate any suggested modifications or improvements or additions. I do want to mention outreach. We, at our very first meeting, Terry Sullivan agreed to write a commentary in the Beachcomber about the Equity Committee. You may have seen that. I will go ahead and put a link to that into the chat if you'd like to go ahead and click on that Beachcomber article. We've also, I started moving forward to find a time when committee members were available to meet. We also asked, who should we be reaching out to in the community to let people know about the Equity Committee and the work of the committee? And so we have a list of groups and individuals. We've been expanding that. And the more we talk about equity and think about what that means, the more groups appear on the list. So the goal there is to make sure that we go beyond the connections that we are likely to be able to establish through the council member engagement that we have. So certainly our council members represent a lot of portions of Vashon-Maury Islands, but certainly not comprehensive and complete. So we want to make sure to reach out to other folks as well. And the committee members are now doing that, where individuals have signed up to reach out to groups, share the Beachcomber article, talk about the work of the committee, and also to ask if there's other groups or individuals that we should be reaching out to. The goal is to really connect the committee to the community and make sure that we don't overlook any portions of our community. I would like to say the outreach is working. We did have contacted by a resident. We think they probably responded to the Beachcomber article. Their concern was about ableism. And fortunately, we have a person on the committee who's, two people actually, that is their primary focus. And so we've asked that committee member to reach out to that resident. The goal is to hope that folks who do reach out to us are warmly received, that we have a chance to understand the information they'd like to provide to us, and hopefully to initiate then conversations in the community about what we're doing and the fact that people can give us a call and talk about any equity related issues that they might want to bring to our attention. So I got fingers crossed that that's going to work well.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
And David, I just have a few more comments on logistics.
Okay.
We did call for officer nominations at our first meeting. We wanted to vote on officers at our second meeting. Unfortunately, we had no nominations received prior to the second meeting. We have now, every committee member has had an opportunity to say yes or no to whether they like to serve. And the great news is we now have nominees for chair and secretary. We'll be voting on them on May 4th. I will say that I want to apologize for any lack of clarity in my position. I had always intended to be willing to volunteer as the chair of the committee. So unfortunately, I think there was some confusion about whether that was my intent or not. But indeed, I'm proposing that I will be happy to chair the committee. If there are any questions about the committee, is any lack of clarity about what we're doing, why we're doing things, more than happy to have people contact me. So I'll go ahead and put my email address and phone number in the chat. I'm available pretty much every day of the week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Go ahead and give me a buzz if you have any questions about how things are going on the Equity Committee. Open for questions if anybody has
them. Don't see any questions. So thank you again, Kevin, and thanks for the work you're doing on this.
Absolutely, thanks.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, and I would like to call Danielle De Clerq's attention to this, as well as Bong Santo Domingo's, is the Fido, the dog park. And the reason I bring this to the county's attention is when we had that survey of island needs, this ranked right up at the very top of it. So I'd like to ask Ms. Ellis to give us a report on Fido. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for what you're doing, and also for the time that you're giving to us to tell you about Street and about what we've been doing in the organization Fido. Fido stands for Friends into Dogs organization, and we are a nonprofit organization recently and committed to securing a safe, fenced dog park for the socialization and enjoyment of dogs and their owners.
Carol?
Yes.
I think we're having a problem with bandwidth. And so if you could turn off your video, you would be able to communicate better. Verbal.
I will. Be happy
Okay,
to do
great.
that. I did not know that.
Not a problem.
Is that better?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, thank you. We've been working as a group to get the 501c3 and be able to be, and have talked to many people on the island. So in our history, we've also done the reading of the minutes from the park district about the issue of a dog park. And we've talked with many other dog owners about what their experiences have been with dogs and whether or not that would be something that they'd be interested in, and had a very high response. I'd have to give a little quip for dogs here. They're really important in our island, and the therapy dogs, which would have benefited from a dog park, have done a lot of work with our, when we've been vaccinating the children, have been there to help, and they do help in the schools. Having dogs that are helping us and giving them a place is really important. We've been building a cadre of supporters by identifying people, by emailing and talking to them, gathering endorsements from other organizations such as VIP and Violet and Vashon-Maury Island Sheepdog Tribes. We've been reviewing properties that might be suitable for a park. We visited properties in the past, and we're getting suggestions from the community as we hear about possible places that could provide us with the grounds for a dog park. We're creating an organizational identity and trying to let people know Fido is, what we stand for, and how important we think this would be for at the end of all that we've been through with COVID, to have a place where people can go safely with the dog, a place for small dogs, another place fenced in, their dogs and talk to one another while they're watching and seeing their dogs socializing. We've had incidents of dogs not being friendly to people, and we think that in getting dog bites or that sort of thing, and we think that having a place dogs can socialize with each other will help the dogs as well as help us get together as owners. So we've been informing our community about our goals and objectives through the Beachcomber by sending letters. And a lot of us participated in the King County survey. So as you were saying, out of that survey, 64% of the 200 respondents said a dog park discussion is a high priority. And some of us have visited dog parks in other communities, which we have seen, and the response there as well. We plan to update you today to ask you just to give you information about, answer any questions you might have, so that you can talk with other people as you're in the community as representatives on the council. And we plan to make a presentation to the park board in May. So we are really appreciative for King County's efforts to purchase parks that might include a space for a dog park. We understand that there's some negotiations for the possibility of property that could include a dog park, and we're very supportive of county's efforts with that. And now that we have our 1C3 status, we're hoping we can get grants or are eligible for working with them to contribute to the work and efforts for creating a dog park on Vashon.
Well,
so if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Thanks.
Okay, and I'm looking to see if there are any questions there. Yes, Morgan Brown has a question.
Hey, Carol, that sounds great. I'd be interested in going to that meeting in May. How do I, or just on going to is it a regularly scheduled board meeting or something for the Parks Department?
Yeah, it is. It's May 24th.
Okay.
There's I think I've gone to the park board meeting in the past without registering to go, just show up as a citizen. And I think that people that could join us at that meeting, that would be very appreciated.
And is there any, I know sort of earlier in your organization, although the issue's been around for a while, any thoughts on location?
Well, some of the places that we've looked at would be Frog Holler. We've looked at Sunset Ridge. We've Island Center. And also another thing we've talked about is working with the land trust to have certain areas, have trails, to have them set aside at certain times for unleashed dogs on the trails, because we have had some problems with dogs on trails before and with people, and if there would be a time for that. That's just another idea in the back of our heads of how we could work to help all of us get along with our four-leggeds and give them to learn to socialize with each other.
I think just to note, I think that's a great idea. I'm on the ad hoc sort of group Friends of Island Center Forest, and the equestrians are very involved in that, and that's always been sort of one of the issues of the increasing amount of dogs and dogs off leash on being a safety issue with all the people that ride on those trails all the time with horses. So I think that's a brilliant idea you just suggested. Hadn't heard it before, but taking trails and maybe having some signage up saying, dogs might be here off leash during certain times would be a possibility. There's an awful lot of trails there.
Yeah.
I see a note from Ethan Russo that the county's in negotiations with property access in Misty Isles Farm.
Yes. Yes, as we know about those negotiations, and we're trying to be patient and watch and listen and support what might happen there.
Okay. All right. Deborah Gooston's got a question.
So not a question, but just a thought, Carol. I'm very pro dog, but I've also seen, comments from people who have trouble with dogs, or also people who just bring poorly behaved dogs into public settings, right? And that's not helpful. Just as we're planning this, a thought occurred to me. I used to have family in Boulder where they had a really terrific system of sort of dogs had tags. If they had demonstrated a certain level of civility, they had green tags. So they were like basically known to be fine to be wandering off leash and safe. And other dogs had to be on leash. And it was sort of a nice way of saying, because there are dogs that actually should not be off leash. They're too rowdy and too aggressive or jumpy, and nobody wants them to be causing trouble. But anyway, it's an interesting, I think it would be worth looking into how they did that, because it seemed to do a nice job of managing different dog personalities safely. So just a thought.
It seems like that's a great idea, and that if we had a dog park, that's a place where, you know, how parents get together and talk about how they're parenting their sometimes. Well, a dog park's a place where dog owners can get together and talk about, well, what have you tried with your dog? And we could have a lot of information available at a dog park where owners could go to someone to learn the skills that they might need to manage a dog that is having more difficulty, or we'd have a way to help them, as well as and to let the public know which dogs are safe or not, and to have owners understand that you're responsible as an owner for your dog's behavior. These are my dogs are at about the toddler age, so they need a lot of support. It's my job. My dog is safe with other people and on a leash if they are not safe off of a leash. And I think that we just have a lot that we could learn from each other. And if we had a place to do that, and the conversations we're having are helping us get together around this idea of supporting a dog park here. Because people bring dogs from off island and would go to a dog park too, and then not have them.
I see Jim Garrison's got a question.
Hi there. Coming from a long line of dog lovers, my daughter was in the guide dogs program at the high school. I have to say that the least reliable judge of a dog's character is their owner. I've been bit in island lumber, and I just think that you're going to have to, if you're going to make some kind of program like that, somebody's going to have to judge the dog other than the owners. I'm all for dog parks where the dogs can run around in an open space. Usually the dogs are pretty good at figuring it out, but the owners are terrible judges of their own dogs. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. I think we really are interested in the dog park, and I was interested in the comment about how we can help all dogs be safe in our community.
Yeah, well, thank you for, bringing this to the council, and thank you to all those questions. In terms of the love of dog owners for their dogs, when I was a prosecutor for King County, the times that I saw people perjure themselves were dog owners on behalf of their dogs. It's true.
Okay.
Providing alibis, you name it,
There's no more unreliable witness than a dog owner.
All right.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay. And next on our agenda, a brief comment about ferry disruptions and implications. I know that Diane Emerson was going to give us some information. Diane?
Yes, we had a last minute cancellation for the meeting tonight. So I'm just going to very briefly just share with you some of the things. The service restoration plan and progress report is in existence now, and we will include this with the minutes. I won't be going over that. We don't have time. We're really late, running late. There was a broken cable on the ramp at the Fauntleroy dock on April 4th. Service was stopped entirely, but this issue was repaired on the same day. There's a new evening departure from Vashon to Fauntleroy via Southworth at 8:15 on weeknights. Washington State Ferries is partnering with Seattle Maritime Academy to respond to the cruise shortage. It's good news. Food service will start on some routes soon, but not the Triangle route. And finally, there is a tentative May 16th date for Washington State Ferries to present information about the Fauntleroy Terminal project to the Community Council. So I will have 2 PDF files that will go along with the minutes, so watch for those when they come out, okay? And sorry, I can't really answer any detailed questions about this, but this might help us get back on track for timing for our meeting.
Great. Well, thank you, Diane. With regard to new business, I just want to report that I spoke to Department of Fish and Wildlife today, and we are trying to get someone to talk to us about shellfish rules. You know, there was some questions about people from off island coming in and harvesting shellfish on beaches, and hopefully we will get a presentation on that at the May meeting, because we have some very low tides coming up in June. And then with regard to the issue of hunting and bringing high power weapons on the island, which is illegal, we were hoping to get a presentation in August, which would be in before the hunting seasons would open up for bow and arrow and for anything. So we're hoping to get those presentations coming up at the Community Council. The next item on our agenda is a community update. Mike Spranger will talk about his new business on Colvos Passage. Mike, if you could tell us the news.
Do we have time? I need about 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've got time for you.
All right. Nick, can I share my screen? Are you in charge of that? Let me see there.
Okay.
You can see my screen?
Yeah, we can do that.
Full screen. Is that in full screen mode for you guys?
No, I think you might want to try clicking slideshow on your PowerPoint.
Yeah, there we go.
There
Okay.
we
There we go. Quick introduction. My name is Mike Spranger. I've lived on the island for about 20 years. I worked for a logistics company in Seattle for about 30 years and left there recently, about a year ago, and then needed to figure out what I was going to do next. And about a year or so ago, I stumbled upon this thing called seaweed farming, which I hadn't really known that much about prior to that, but I did a bunch of research and studying and talked to a bunch of people. And I would say well on my way to starting the second seaweed/shellfish farm in Washington State and the first one in King County. So I wanted to give this group a few more details. This picture here is from the front of the Beachcomber about 6 weeks ago. So some of you may have seen some things about this. I actually included my email address in that article, and I got quite a bit of feedback from people, mostly positive. Lots of people sort of wanting more information and wanting to volunteer and help me. Definitely a couple of people who had some concerns. And I think I've addressed most of those, but maybe not. And so in the spirit of communication and transparency and all that, I wanted to come to the council here. I asked Gavin and Diane if I could have a couple of minutes just to share more information, because it's not something that a lot of people are familiar with. So with that as an intro, this is what we're going to talk about in the next 10 minutes, where it is, how do you grow seaweed, what's good about it, and what are the various problems that I've come across, and how am I going to make some money? I'm not going to get rich on this venture, but it is a for-profit venture. I do plan and hope to make a little bit of money, certainly not in the first year, or maybe even in the year 2, but at some point I'm going to make some money on this deal. So with that, in terms of the location, in the bottom left corner, you can see a little red line, which is where it's going to be. I chose that location for a couple of reasons. One, it's relatively close to Quartermaster Harbor and to Dockton for boat access. Two, the current there through Colvos Passage is actually quite swift and funky, which in some regards is a good thing. In other regards, it poses some challenges. It's good in that there's lots of nutrients that go through there that are going to be good for the seaweed and the shellfish. The third reason is because there's relatively few shoreline homes in this area. There's one boated only house that's about right here, if you can see my pointer, a little bit south of that red line. And then there's a walk-in that's about here, a little bit north of that red line. And I intentionally sort of chose the area in between them just so I wasn't annoying and, you know, putting this thing right in front of their house. And the fourth reason that I chose that site was because I didn't know this previously, but roughly, I don't know, maybe half of the coastline of Vashon has got either active or inactive geoduck permits on them. And doing an aquaculture farm where there are existing geoduck permits was just going to add another level of complexity. So that didn't exist, which sort of eliminated that level of complexity. I'll pause there. Does anybody have any questions about this location or anything I've said to date or so far? No? Okay. What does it look like? So this is a fairly basic picture, but it does a pretty good job of showing what it looks like. From the surface, all you're going to see are some buoys. Oh, and by the way, it's going to be about a 10-acre site, of which roughly 6 acres will be the actual farm. The other 4 acres will be the space for the anchors, which are on the perimeter. So I need some scope for those anchor lines, which will constitute around the perimeter. So the farm itself will only be about 6 acres eventually. And so there are buoys, and from those buoys hang long lines off of which kelp grows, and it's sugar kelp, also known as kombu, that you can find in all of your Asian markets, Wajimaya and elsewhere in various snacks and other forms. And it's starting to make its way into more traditional grocery stores and markets. In addition to the kelp growing off of these long lines, there will be shellfish. And this picture is a little bit inaccurate for my purposes. I will have mussel socks hanging from these lines. I'll also have oyster and clam baskets or cages hanging from these lines. So there won't be any, in some setups, they actually have the clams and oyster cages on the substrate, on the floor, ocean floor. In my case, I won't be doing that. So those will be hanging from these lines. So there will be nothing on the ocean floor with the exception of the anchors that are anchoring this whole thing in place. And there will be nothing visible from the surface except for some buoys. Okay. And then when it comes time to harvesting, I'll have a little boat, probably 22 feet or less, that I will lift up this long line manually or with a davit, small davit, and then manually cut off the seaweed and put it into the boat and then transport it. And likewise with the shellfish, that'll all be done manually in a relatively small boat. What's good about it? Lots of good things. I had a picture, I've got a little underwater drone that I've sent down into that area. And that particular area is pretty barren right now. The substrate or the ocean floor is made up of cobble, just small rocks, which is one of the reasons, or the prime reason why there isn't any geoducks there, because geoducks like sandy and silty areas. But when you create, or when I or nature creates a kelp forest, you end up getting a lot of other benefits in terms of other fish that use that kelp for habitat or for protection from larger prey. which might bring in the sea otters or the seals and ultimately the orca. And when you have shellfish in there, it helps to filter the water and create habitat for other organisms. So right now the habitat or the waters around there's really not much going on. The anticipation is that once you have this environment set up, that you'll get a lot more biodiversity in that area and the surrounding area. Another good thing about kelp, whether it be farmed or natural, is that I didn't know this until I started getting more and more into this, but a lot of you probably have heard of ocean acidification. That is the process by which the ocean absorbs all of the carbon that we're emitting into the atmosphere. And through some chemistry, it makes the ocean a lot more acidic than it used to be. And through that acidity, it prevents the shells of certain things like oysters, clams, mussels, scallops, as well as coral, which we don't have around here, but obviously there is coral in lots of other parts of the world, but it prevents those organisms from growing their shells, which then degrades the whole ecosystem. So kelp does a fabulous job of absorbing that carbon and reducing this ocean acidification that is happening as a function of climate change. In addition, kelp is a tremendous absorber of nitrogen through all of the agriculture that we do and the fertilizers that we put on our lawns and so forth. The ocean is becoming extremely nitrogen rich, which is one of the things, not the only thing, but one of the things that creates these algae blooms that we see. And kelp forests absorb a lot of that nitrogen and take that out of those waters. So it's what's known as a regenerative farm, meaning not only are you creating a product, a crop, but it's actually helping, unlike traditional farming where you're taking nutrients out of the soil or you're taking water out of reservoirs or whatever, the kelp is actually giving back in the form of helping the waters become healthier. This is just a picture of a real nice healthy reef, which again we don't have around here, but it's all connected. And then bleached coral. So bleached coral looks like on the road. Coral doesn't grow as well because of the ocean acidification, which then results in all the other organisms around it not flourishing. Some of the problems and challenges that I've had in terms of putting this together. So I started in earnest last October. And the first thing I did was check with the Puyallup tribe. The Puyallup has what are called the UNA rights to the waters around Vashon. UNA is the usual and accustomed rights. So they have the shellfish and the fishing rights to the waters around Vashon. And I had to check with them to make sure that they didn't have any problems or issues with the plan. And because I wasn't going to be interfering with any of their gooey duck harvesting or farming, not farming, but harvesting, they didn't have any issues and in fact were quite supportive of the whole idea. I also had to work with, or am working now with King County. They've got a number of different permits that I have to get. The Army Corps of Engineers, I didn't know this beforehand, but the Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for protecting all of the waters, all of the country's waters. And so I have filed a permit with them. They actually have, they've done a public comment period that ended a couple of weeks ago and gave the public notification of these plans. I got approval from the Department of Fish and Wildlife to proceed. I got approval from the Department of Ecology to proceed. And ultimately, once I get all these approvals, I will lease those waters from the Department of Natural Resources on a per acre basis. I'm fairly certain that DNR isn't going to have any problems once I get all of these permits in place. Then it's just a function of DNR leasing the waters to me, just like they would lease lands to a rancher to graze their cattle or their sheep or something like that. I also have to follow the Coast Guard's guidance in terms of having proper navigational aids in place. Other challenges are that, like I said, I'm going to be the second seaweed farmer in the state. It's relatively popular on the East Coast. I would say there are dozens and dozens of small seaweed farms out there. There's a small handful in Alaska. There are none in Oregon. There's a couple in California, but it's definitely something that if you hadn't heard about it before tonight, you may start to hear and see more and more in the news. It's definitely something that is catching a lot of people's attentions in terms of it being an alternative, not only food source, but well, actually, I'll talk about potential uses here in a second. But there's not a lot of established best practices for that. In addition, there's not a lot of established markets. In Asia, in particular, 95% of the seaweed is grown there, and has been for decades and hundreds, if not thousands of years. First Nations here in the States have been utilizing seaweed for hundreds of years, but from a commercial point of view, it hasn't gotten a lot of popularity, but that's really starting to change, I think. And then in terms of some uses, so lots and lots of food uses. This one here in the middle is nori. Everybody knows about nori for sushi, but there's also lots of different types that are being used more and more for salads and supplements, either salads on their own or supplements to other types of salads. Lots of uses in the health and wellness industry. These are more on the for skincare. These are more from the point of view of vitamins and minerals. Lots of news in this area. This is not going to be the case for the seaweed that I'm going to be growing, but there's a certain type of seaweed. This is pretty interesting, actually.
Mike,
yeah.
I'm sorry, we're kind of running at 15 minutes already.
Oh, that long, huh? Okay, so I'll wrap it up here. The last thing was, if anybody has any questions, there's my email, or concerns, send me an email and we'll get together and talk about it. It's a new thing and I want to make sure that I'm as communicative as I can be with people on Vashon, because I think it is going to be, it's going to happen, and I want to make sure that I address everybody's needs to the degree that I can.
Well, thank you, Mike, for bringing this to the community council and to our attention. And
sure, you're welcome. I'm sorry,
sounds
I
like
went
a
over
real
that.
interesting project.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next item would be open discussion. Sorry, Jim Garrison. Did
Hi,
you
Mike.
have?
I
Go
just
ahead.
want to encourage the council to support this project. I think it's I've been looking into it myself, and I think it's coming big time, and I think it's a terrific project. One thing, I don't believe we have any sea otters here. We have lots of river otters, and I'm a little curious how you're going to deal with predation. There's going to be a fair amount of attack on your project by those animals, and wonder if you thought about that.
I have, and maybe you and I can talk about it later since we're out of time.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike, and thanks for the question, Jim. But if we can pursue this in another venue, that would be great.
Sure, David.
Okay. Open discussion. I don't know that any items have been brought up to our attention on that matter. So at this point, for the old community council, I'd like to announce our next meeting date will be Monday, May 16th. And I would like to adjourn this meeting of the Vashon-Maury Island Community Council so that we may start the meeting, the second update meeting of the 501c4 organization, AKA the Reboot. So Diane, if you would like to take over the meeting.
Okay, so thank you very much, David. Now that everyone's worn down, I think we'll move through this pretty quickly since it's getting late. Okay. So we're keeping these two separate because it's really important as we move to the new organization that we have two separate meetings, and it's just easier to do it in the same evening. So first, we're just going to cover old business. We have an advisory vote on the articles of incorporation, which include the new name. And so I would like someone on the board to please read the proposed vote.
Okay.
The motion.
Diane, I'd be happy to do that. Let's see. That was
it's on the agenda, David, on the internal agenda, if you have that in front of you.
Oh, okay.
Just go ahead and read it.
We move to adopt these proposed articles of incorporation and the name Vashon-Maury Community Council. If the Secretary of State determines that name is too close to our previous name, we further move to propose the name Vashon Community Council to the Secretary of State. So at this point,
we
go
can
ahead.
have some discussion about that now. And I would like to, the link for these articles of incorporation have been
Point
up
of
now.
order, do we need to have it seconded? I second it.
It's already been moved and seconded.
Oh,
It was
sorry.
moved and seconded back at the March meeting.
So this was for the vote now.
Yeah, this is.
Oh, okay,
this
I'm
is-
sorry.
this
It's
is for the
okay.
vote. We can discuss it, but then we'll have a vote because it's already been moved.
Okay.
And if someone would like to see raise your hand if you would like to see the articles once again. They've been posted. They're on the link is on the website. They're out there. If you haven't had a chance to see them, there's been like almost no comments on them. Everyone says, looks good to me. And then the name has been well approved by a survey. So just looking to see if there's any hands up on this one. No, I guess we can take a vote then. Whoops.
Okay.
John has his hand up.
John?
I'd like to move that we go to a vote.
Okay, let's
Okay.
call a question and do it, huh?
All right.
Okay, so I would like everyone to vote on this. If you are okay with it, put your raise hand on your reactions and we'll take the vote on the articles of incorporation for the reboot and the new name. You were all ready, weren't you? You're absolutely ready.
Let's see.
About 17 out of 19 eligible.
That's excellent because that is definitely 2/3 and more vote. So we're in. We have a new name. We have a new organization. Thank you everyone so much. And we will now begin the process of filing this with the state and get going on this new organization.
Great.
Diane, what's the new name again?
The new name is the Vashon-Maury Community Council, and I will put it in the chat.
And we also secured the URL v-mcc.org.
Oh, great. Great.
We were thinking it was probably a pretty good thing that people would probably vote for it. So,
All right.
okay, so that's taken care of. Thank you very much. We can all put our hands down now. And I think mine is down. Yeah, okay. Thank you for helping with that, Nick. And so now we have some new business and I'm looking for someone to make and second a motion to adopt proposed bylaws and standing rules.
I would make a motion that we adopt these proposed bylaws and standing rules.
I second that motion.
Thank you both very much. The proposed bylaws and standing rules also have been sent to you email. They are also linked on the website. And the board has worked on these and reviewed these. And we're now looking for input from the community on the bylaws and the standing rules. Two key things, as I mentioned in the email that I sent out, were that changing the age limit to 18 years and older because of the difficulty and the time-consuming aspects of working with the new laws, working with minors. And also to increase the size of the board from 9 to 12 so that we have more hands to do the work. Other than that, they're very, very similar to the existing bylaws. And you're welcome to take a look at them and ask questions. And we have another chance you have a whole nother month to review these. And we will actually have the advisory vote on these at the next meeting in a month from now. So there's plenty of time for people to think about things and make suggestions. Also keep in mind as you're doing that it's not going to be terribly hard to edit or make changes in either the standing rules or these new bylaws. They're easier to make changes in than the previous bylaws. So it's not the end of the world if they don't get approved the way you want them right now. So is there any questions? Oh, okay, Melvin has a question. Yes, Melvin?
Yes, between now and the next meeting in next month, will the board be able to formulate any amendments to put on there, or will that have to be done at the meeting?
The way this works is that the board is the organization, the interim board of the new organization is the group that does the final approval of the first set of bylaws and standing rules. So the vote that the community is going to do is an advisory vote. So it's important that that the board takes a look at the suggestions being offered during the month. And yes, and the board will go ahead and make changes. And then we'll review the key changes again, and the community will provide input and vote on these bylaws. But it'll be an advisory vote. It's up to the board to make the final decision on this first set of bylaws and standing rules. And they will do that after the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. And it's an advisory vote because with this new organization, until we actually have these bylaws approved, we don't actually have members. So we have to have the organization and the bylaws set up that talk about the members and how the members vote and all that before we have, before the members can actually take part and actually vote. That's why it's a little strange how that works, but that's how it is.
Well, and for context, that's because a lot of the new laws in Washington State around nonprofits concern the membership and who is a qualified member and how sort of what responsibilities and rights members have. So until we can establish that, it's just the board that will make decisions, and then we can have our well-established membership actually vote on things.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so there we go. We're very close to 9 o'clock. I'm really pleased about that. Our next meeting will be Monday, May 16th. Again, we'll have these two meetings of the two different organizations. And I very much look forward to having people take a look at these bylaws and standing rules and ask your questions and make your comments. So anything else people would like to do or say? Okay, very good. Thank you all very, very much for showing up tonight and participating. It's been really great. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, closing it down. Good night, all.
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.